Okay, we are looking at the study guide for Unit 4. Question number 1. We're actually going to work on all of Objective 1 in this video. Question number 1 has a monomial times a trinomial. When we multiply, it's really just using the distributive property. And so we're going to take 4x and multiply it to each thing in here. So take this 4x, I'm going to multiply it to the x squared. 4 times the understood 1 is 4. There's 1x here and 2x's here, which makes 3x's. We're then going to take the 4x and we're going to multiply it to the negative 3x. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. There's 1x here and 1x here. 1 plus 1 is 2. We're then going to take the 4x and we're going to multiply it to this positive 5. 4x, or 4 times positive 5 is positive 20. And then there's 1x here and none here. 1 plus 0 is 1. So we have 1x, but we don't need that 1, and so it'll go away. A thing to keep in mind, if you have an x on the outside, everything that you multiply will have an x in it, and it'll have that many more than it is inside the parentheses already. So see how there was 2 here, and there's 1 on the outside? There's going to be 1 more than 2 here. There's 1 here, so there's going to be 1 more than that here. See how there's none here? There's going to be 1 more than that there. And this becomes our final answer. Okay. Looking at question 2, it's the exact same type of question. We have a monomial times a trinomial. Okay. Notice how we have 3 x's on the outside. That means there'll be 3 more x's than there were inside the parentheses. So we'll take this negative 2x to the third and we'll multiply it to the 6x to the sixth. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. And there's 3 more than 6, which means there's 9 x's here. Then we do negative 2 times positive 7, and you get negative 14. And there's 3 plus 4, which is 7. And then you have negative 2 times, and there's an understood 1 there, which is negative 2. And then there's 3 plus 2, which is 5. And this becomes our final answer here. Okay. Looking at question number 3, this is a combination of a monomial times a trinomial subtracted by another monomial times a trinomial. This looks harder, but it's really the same thing with 1 extra step at the end. So just like we did before, we'll take the 4x and we'll distribute it to everything inside. So 4x times 5x to the third. 4 times 5 is 20. X, there's 1 here, which means there's going to be 1 more x than we see here. Okay? So 1 plus 3, 4. And then we do 4 times positive 2, which is positive 8. And then we have 1 plus 2, which is 3. And then we have 4 times negative 5, which is negative 20. And there's 1 plus 1, which makes 2x's. Okay? So now we're going to move to the other one. And remember that that sign goes with the 2. We're going to take negative 2x squared and multiply it by 7x squared. And see how there's 2 on the outside? There'll be 2 more than what you see in here. Okay? So negative 2 times positive 7 is negative 14. There's 2 plus 2, which makes 4 x's. Negative 2 times, and it's a negative 1, a negative and a negative, make a positive, and 2 times 1 is 2. There's 2 plus another understood 1 there, which is 3. Then you do negative 2 times positive 8, which is negative 16. And then there's 2 x's here and none here, which means we have 2 x's. Okay? Now where we would normally have stopped, now we have to go through and find our like terms. So, if you notice, this has an x to the 4th, and this has an x to the 4th. So you have 20 minus 14, which is 6, and then keep the x to the 4th the same. When you add and subtract, you don't change exponents. Okay? Think of them as objects. You have 20 pencils minus 14 pencils. So you have 6 pencils. Then we'll look at the x to the 3rd. And then x to the 3rd here. So we have 8x to the 3rd plus 2x to the 3rd. Or 8 pencils plus 2 pencils is 10 pencils. So you have positive 10x to the 3rd. Okay? And then we'll go, we have negative 20x squared, negative 16x squared. They're the same signs, so we'll add. So we have 20 plus 16 is 36. And then the bigger number is 20, and it's negative, so that's going to be negative. And then we have x squared. And this becomes our final answer. Okay? Question number 4 is exactly like question number 1 and number 2. It just has an additional letter in there, or variable. But just like we did before, you'll take this monomial and multiply it to the trinomial that's inside. So we'll take this 5x squared, and 5x y squared, and multiply it. 5 times 2 is 10. We have 1x here, plus 2 x's there, so that makes 3 x's. We have 2 y's here and 1 y there, so you have 3 y's. Remember, that's 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. So now, we'll take this this 5y x y squared and multiply it to this 4xy. 5 times 4 is positive 20. There's 1x plus another 1x, which makes 2 x's. We have 2 y's plus 1 y, which makes 3 y's. Notice how there was 1 y here and 1 y here, and they both ended up with the same exponents? It's because we're adding the same number to both of them. Okay? Then we're going to take this 5x y squared and multiply it to the negative x y squared. 5 times what's understood as a negative 1 gives you negative 5. 1x plus 1x makes 2 x's, and 2 y's plus 2 y's makes 4 y's. And notice how none of these have exactly the same exponents on them, so they cannot combine, so they are not like terms. And that's your final answer. And that's the end of Objective 1 for your study guide.